Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Setis, and welcome to Cinagi's 2024 launch. Much appreciate your time as always. We'll be doing our annual health policy update, in which we will share with you some of the changes happening in the industry. We'll also then have a look at some trends and observations that we have in the private sector. After that, then I'll hand over to Arno, who will take you through our technology and how that's helping us to achieve better and quicker turnaround times. We'll then hand over to Mandy, who will then cover our service team and what they're doing in terms of ensuring that our service levels remain where they are. And then lastly, I'll come back to our changes for 2024 and the updates and what's happening in those changes there. So having a look at broad health policy, there's been some interesting changes this year. We saw the big one was the NHR bill was passed by the National Assembly. So that's there's been a lot of reaction to that from specifically the private sector. And I think what's quite pleasing to see is that it's an unequivocal rejection of what is in the NHR bill. Previously, there wasn't really much in terms of reaction to it. I think possibly many stakeholders were believing that through the hearings in the Health Portfolio Committee that there would probably be some changes to come out through the bill, but those unfortunately didn't materialize. So I think the voices are now growing stronger in terms of criticism around this NHR bill. But we need to think that we have an election coming up next year. In fact, it's probably less than a year from where we are now. And obviously we're going to hear the rhetoric around it. So we need to just sort of bear in mind when we do hear that, is it just electioneering or is it real substance? The other big factor was, or change was the suggested LCBO framework has been submitted to the Minister of Health. Now, this is quite significant and I think a very pleasing development. It will open up the low income market to medical schemes, and I think they have some big advantages over the insurers, which I'll touch on a bit later in terms of the slides as well. So just having a look at NHR, and as I mentioned just now, there's been a lot of reaction to it, a lot of concern being raised in the market. So what we did is we put together what we thought would be the timelines around how the NHR would develop as a policy. And I think we created a fairly optimistic timeline to just sort of show how far into the future this project really is, this policy, if you like, as it stands now. So we have a look. So the National Assembly passed it this year in June. Now, National Assembly is the lower house of Parliament. We then have the upper house of Parliament, which is the National Council of Provinces. And they also need to pass the bill. And they also need to go through the same public hearings, and they need to go through the same consultation process, the participatory democracy that's required of our Constitution. So the National Assembly took 4 years to complete all those hearings. So even if we optimistically assume the National Council of Provinces will take 2 years, that takes us then obviously to 2025. At which stage, if all the provinces, or 6 of the 9 provinces is what's required, if they have passed the bill, the President can then sign it, and then it will become the NHR Act, at which stage it will then actually prevail as legislation. However, importantly, the NHR would then still not be able to operate. It would still need a money bill, which would have to come from Treasury to actually enable the bill to proceed in terms of its functions. So that's quite significant, especially since we are now hearing from the Minister of Finance that they're looking for budget cuts because simply our financial situation is not that great. So it's hard to imagine how they're going to actually be able to raise this money bill. But let's assume that by 2028 a money bill is then passed, and that then would effectively give a green light to NHR. And let's assume implementation starts by 2030. And if we assume very optimistically that by 2035 that the NHR is then fully implemented as its design is intended, we're looking at 12 years from where we are now. And that, I think, is still a fairly optimistic timeline. The term fully implemented is in inverted commas there for a reason, because that's where the infamous clause 33 of the NHR bill says that medical schemes at that stage will then not be able to insure services that are insured under the NHR bill. So that's really the only time at which the private sector will then be substantially affected by this NHR bill. So as you can see, on an optimistic timeline, we're still quite far away. And then I think what's very important to look at is at the bottom there, those 2 arrows. there are two national elections that are within that timeline. Next year, 2024, and then 2029 again. And the reason we bring that up is because that is a very good likelihood that now coalition governments will be coming into implementation within South Africa. Many polls are saying that the ANC is not going to get a majority next year, but even if they do, it's very likely that they will not in the 2029 elections. And the reason to bring this up is that coalition governments always bring about changes in policy, because now you don't have the hegemony from a single party with a single voice. You now have to have trade-offs between the coalition partners. So NHI may materially change in that process, or possibly even get dropped in its entirety and a new health policy is implemented. So there's a lot of potential for change in terms of the future, where things are going. So we're not overly concerned about what the NHI means for the private sector at this stage. But I thought we'd share that and have a look through how it goes. Other things to contemplate in the process is what is the international experience of building national health systems. None of them happen quickly. They all get built measured in decades rather than years. So it's any sort of fanciful idea that things are going to be implemented within the next couple of years is simply not realistic. And also the other aspect around it is that the vast majority of national health systems make use of a combination of public healthcare with private providers and private funders in that process, delivering the national health package, that whatever that is designed to be. So very, very few countries go this single route, which is what the NHI is attempting to do. And certainly there's no developing countries that can do it because simply it's not affordable. So looking also at specific barriers to the NHI, besides the sort of implementation and legal processes that we looked at just now, the other aspects that are quite important there are legal challenges are almost guaranteed. There have been several public proclamations from various entities such as Solidarity and the Helen Suzman Foundation, who publicly stated they will definitely legally challenge it. The other aspect is affordability. And as I mentioned just now, the Minister of Finance has obviously been ringing the alarm bells around where we are financially, and he's even raised it on the NHI, saying they should rather just upgrade and improve the hospitals rather than go down the NHI route. So there's already some sort of disagreement within the ANC itself as to whether the NHI is the right route to go. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. The other aspect is the enormous complexity of the policy, which might mean that simply there's no implementation. So that's also a significant barrier to the implementation. And then lastly, the aspect of a failing public sector. It's it's difficult to bring about change when the existing functions are not actually operating properly either. So that's a very significant barrier to the NHI implementation as well. So on NHI, I think the broad message that we want to share is we're not overly concerned. There's a lot of water still flow under the bridge. And I think we can carry on as business as usual without too much concern. We'll obviously just have to see how things pan out in the future. That other development was on the LCBO. That I think is very exciting. And we also looked at how that can be implemented. We know there's the work group, the two work streams that have been working through the Council for Medical Schemes and put through the proposals to the Minister. But we believe that LCBO can be implemented within the schemes without any major legislative changes. It really could be done with the CMS passing on the exemption that's currently given to insurance companies. The same exemption could be passed on to medical schemes so that they could operate an LCBO. And the advantage of that is the medical schemes sit with much more established provider networks. So the coverage is far better, and I think of a better quality than what many of the insurers are able to put together. And then the major plus, and I mean this really talks to this is a game changer in terms of what the medical schemes have, and that's the medical tax credit. So an LCBO through a medical scheme would bring that tax advantage in, and that's very significant. And we have a look there. The current tax credit in this year is 364 Rand for the principal member and first dependent, and then 246 for subsequent dependents. So it's a very significant subsidy. If we look at a family of 4 principal adult plus 2 children, that's a subsidy of in excess of 1,200 Rand a month, which is certainly not insignificant and could fund a fairly comprehensive package, although not equivalent to what the PMBs are. But certainly not a very, very low package. It would actually be a fairly reasonable package of care that could be put together there. So in effect, the medical schemes, because of the tax advantages, is a superior funding vehicle to running through insurance companies. So we take an example here, having a look at a package. Let's say a package that costs exactly what the tax credit is, at 364 Rand. So a single member on a primary care package at 364. The cost through an insurance company is the 364, but the cost through a medical scheme effectively could be zero, because the medical tax credit would then be credited to the members, to the taxpayer's membership. It obviously doesn't help if somebody's earning below the tax threshold, but there's still a significant portion of South African workforce that are taxpayers, but they're not. They simply cannot afford the current medical scheme packages that are available. So there's still a very significant market that could fit in here, and I think the medical schemes would do very well, given the tax advantage that they've got on that. Okay, so moving on to the private sector. What do we see happening here? I think within the medical scheme membership, we see the aging continue. We don't see any reversal on that, and that's obviously quite concerning, because it means increasing utilization of services, which then obviously the result of that is rising contributions, and the annual increases are significantly beyond CPI. I think at the date of our recording on this, only one medical scheme had launched for 2024, and I think the weighted average increase was around 11%. So we're back into the double-digit figures again, and we'll have to see how it pans out. But that was all putting pressure on participation within the medical scheme environment. The policy remains one of a voluntary membership, so there's still no indication that mandatory cover will be brought in, as was discussed and sort of looked into in the health market inquiry. But I think at some stage we're going to have a look at that as a policy principle, because if we're continuing aging, is pushing the costs up within the private sector, so it becomes a vicious circle of not being able to attract new members in because people are getting older. And I think that mandatory cover will something policymakers will need to look at in the next couple of years. So if we have a look at the numbers in the market, so open medical schemes are about 4.8 million belly button beneficiaries, and the closed schemes are about 4.1. So collectively, there are about 9 million beneficiaries in the market. On gap cover, our best estimate is that about 1.8 million lives are covered on gap cover. So then if we have a look at what the total market is for gap cover membership, 9 million lives on medical aid is between the closed and the open schemes. So we're effectively looking at over 7 million beneficiaries potentially for the gap cover market. So there's a very big market there available for new growth, virgin growth, if you say that. So I think the opportunities are looking pretty good. Because having a look at then the opportunities for healthcare intermediaries, they're well established across the industry, and certainly from our point of view, represent a fairly efficient form of distribution in terms of product and growth. So we're very much in favor of the retention of the healthcare intermediary in the market. And I think also we can have a look at the industry complexity. Medical aids are fairly complex, even the addition of gap melding onto that. None of these things are fairly simple. So I think the industry complexity will ensure that there's continued demand for independent advice. So that's, I think, is a very positive for healthcare intermediaries in the market. And then the alternative products that exist like GAP and then the LCBO that we spoke about earlier represent substantial opportunities to grow your own businesses in that space. Okay, so broadly speaking, the concerns are, or the downside risk really, are the aging population and with a constrained economy. So we're not going to see too much growth, I think, in the core medical scheme membership base. But the evolution of alternative products such as the LCBO and the rising demand for gap cover means that there are upside opportunities in the industry. So there's a bit of a mixed bag, but I think some good opportunities, and I'm hoping we can all sort of work together in terms of picking up on those. So I'm going to hand over to Anna now, who's going to run through our digital world and explain to you basically what sets us apart in terms of the service that we're able to deliver to our clients and to yourselves.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for those valuable insights. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for making the time to join us this morning. This morning I was just going to take a couple of minutes to cover our digital first approach to doing business, the impact it's had, while also having a look at the features and tools you can expect from us and going into 2024. But before we go ahead, maybe just a brief little bit of history. When we started off, we wanted to do things a little bit different. We wanted to have a digital first approach to doing business. But when I say digital first, what does that mean? I think that could mean many things to many people. But to us, it meant capitalizing on our existing digital assets while having a pure customer focus and then fostering a customer centric culture throughout the business. So when we set off on this approach, there were a couple of unique but simple realizations. The first realization is that we had a unique set of stakeholders. Not unique when you consider the insurance industry, but definitely unique when you look at the ever expanding digital marketplace. In our case, we had three different stakeholders, each of them very unique in the sense that they all require different servicing methods, different requirements from us. These stakeholders being our intermediaries, most of you listening to us today, employer groups, clients of our intermediaries, and lastly, the actual policyholder. Second realization came about when we considered the currently servicing channels that exist and the mediums currently being deployed. When we looked at these, we realized that they are all a bit outdated. They are extremely inefficient and massively expensive. But most importantly, they lacked the customer focus we were looking to instill in our business. Considering these realizations, we knew we had to rethink our approach entirely. Effectively, what that meant is we had a blank canvas to engineer a digital ecosystem that will be fit for purpose. We then set off and invested in a bespoke administration system that's currently forms the core of our administration capabilities, while we also deployed various best of breed digital technologies that will also enhance the customer experience. What we were left with was a unique ecosystem that is geared towards putting our clients first. To give you some examples of how we've deployed our digital tools throughout 2023, we've been faced with some scenarios where there would be a concentration of policyholders who either had concerns around connectivity or merely had a preference to speak with a human rather than dealing with a bot. In these instances, we were able to set up virtual walk-in centers. What this meant was that we placed one of our consultants at these virtual walk-in centers that would allow a policyholder to schedule a time to visit the center. At this point, our agents would have full access at their fingertips to the status of a policy, to view the progress of a claim, or to assist with any reason there is a hold-up with a claim. We then went a step further and made our virtual claims assistant available to all policyholders, and not just those where connectivity is of concern, but any policyholder looking to better understand the claims journey and the requirements of making a claim. What that actually translates to is that when you've submitted your claim and there's any uncertainty, you can schedule a virtual consult with one of our consultants who would be able, through a video conference, assist you in making your claim, submitting your claim, give you a better understanding of what document is needed. And this is all done at that point of submitting your claim. So it avoids a back and forth email interaction to get to the point of submitting the right doctor's account or a claims transaction history, or whatever the case might be. Then lastly, we have our WhatsApp line, which today is not new to anyone anymore, as the benefits of having WhatsApp as a contact medium has been proven over and over across many industries. I mean, personally, I use WhatsApp to activate my DSTV, especially now in the rugby season, or to engage with Discovery, really anything Discovery. And my favorite being the Fly Safari boarding pass, all very convenient. Now, if you look at our Cinagi WhatsApp line, it's no different really. It offers the same level of convenience. You can you can get from WhatsApp. You can gain access to all your policy information. You can get an update on your claim. You can access any marketing material. And if at any point you feel like the conversation is very one-sided, or you'd rather want to speak to a human rather than go through the menus, you can simply flip over to one of our consultants, a human consultant, who would be able to assist you. Now, if we look forward to 2024 and what you can expect from us in 2024, we will be launching our new website very soon, hopefully still in the next couple of weeks. And then we're very excited to announce that we've made some exciting changes to the existing member portal as well as the broker portal. Then we will also be deploying an employer portal in the first half of 2024. Some of the new features of these portals would be, for one, the user experience. There's been significant changes to that, make it a bit more easier. You've been, especially in the broker and the employer portal, you'll be able to track the status of any applications or withdrawals that have been submitted to us. In the case of the broker portal and the employer portal, you'll be able to extract member listings that has the detail of every employee active under a specific debtor. In the case of the broker portal, you'll be able to drill down on each policy and actually get to the granular information relating to a claim. You'll be able to extract those notifications that can include any internal comments, give you a better idea of what information is outstanding to get the claim through the process. And then lastly, the general maintenance. If there's any updates needed to a policy, again, you'd be able to do this on the broker and the employer portal. This will be things like your contact information, adding of a dependent, or removing a dependent, all those type of things would be able to be done on these portals. Then, in closing, we look forward to the efficiencies we can realize with these portals and the addition of them to our digital stack. I will leave you with this. Although we embrace a digital-first strategy, we simply cannot ignore the human touch. And therefore, although our digital strategy provides a platform to deliver our services, it's a combination of our platforms and our people that result in service excellence. With that, I hand over to Mandy Krom, who is our head of client services, who has a real passion for putting the client first. Mandy will unpack the real world output and what you can expect to receive from us. I thank you for your time. Have a wonderful week. Looking forward to next year. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, Anu. When we designed our servicing protocols, we wanted to have a product offering that incorporated the speed, efficiency, and the accuracy of our digital-first technology without losing the human element of client engagements. This led us to measure and differentiate between the query types and then allow the most appropriate channel to service that query. Where a basic service fulfillment is required, such as requesting a policy document or more information on how to claim, we leave that to the automated digital technology channel to resolve the client query. An example of this would be the use of the WhatsApp chatbot. Most of our client queries fall into this category and are often resolved within minutes and sometimes seconds. Whilst we have optimized our digital touchpoint, it is not lost on us that more complex queries often involve a level of uncertainty for our members, in which case maintaining the human element in resolving such queries is essential. Our systems monitor all queries, and the more complex ones are automatically referred to a consultant who will be able to personally engage with the member to resolve that query. We have developed a team of highly trained individuals who have extensive product and process knowledge to ensure that the one-on-one engagements are resolved promptly and professionally. We firmly believe that the continuous investment in the knowledge and expertise of our team is essential to ensuring the improvement of the best possible experience for our clients. In conjunction with our digital-first approach, this essentially translates to quicker turnaround times in our end-to-end policy administration. And I do hope that some of you have already had a positive experience in this regard. To demonstrate our superior service levels, we can share some statistics with you. The vast majority of our new member applications are activated within minutes. 50% of the claims received during the past year were settled within 48 hours, and we have an overall average turnaround time on all our claims of less than 4 days. Lastly, our exponential growth over the last year, which has been made possible by you, has not seen a decline in our service levels or turnaround times. We're very proud to share with you that we've received a numerous amount of compliments on the service levels received by our members, and also that we have to date not received one complaint that has been lodged with the insurance ombuds. Thank you everybody for making the time. I hope I was able to share some insights on how we place a huge amount of emphasis on our customer service, but more importantly, how committed we are to achieving service excellence. We look forward to working with you in 2024. I will now hand over to Mike to unpack the 2024 benefit updates. Mike, over to you.
Okay, so welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that overview from Arno and from Andy. Service is a key aspect to our business, and we understood that in order to achieve excellent service, we needed to have the right technology and the right people. And that I think we have achieved, and I hope you've enjoyed some of our service level turnarounds already. And if not, we're hoping you will be fairly shortly. Okay, so to close off today's session, we're going to go through the product updates and what we've got in store for 2024. The range of products hasn't changed. We have gap cover, which I'm sure most of you are familiar. We also have the accident cover range, and then we have the primary care cover range, our employer-funded solution for low-cost primary care cover. On the gap cover side, we have our two products, Gap Max and Core, but we've recently introduced a new product called Gap Select, designed around compulsory groups, as we're able to provide very rich benefits at very cost-effective premiums. So it also opens up the discussion or opens up the opportunity for you to have the discussion with clients about implementing compulsory gap cover as opposed to voluntary, which seems to still be the majority trend within the market today. But it opens up that opportunity, and so when you get quotes from us going forward now, you'll be getting quotes where appropriate. If the clients want to look at compulsory, then you'll get a quote on Gap Select as well as the other two standard products. On the accident cover, we retain the same plans, Base and Plus, which give cover to private hospitals and obviously casualty ward cover in the event of an accident. And then lastly, the primary care range also hasn't changed. We have the Elite, the Premier, and the Connect. The Connect is our virtual care package. And as I noted just now, this is an employer-funded product. It's not an insurance product, nor is it a medical scheme. So it's an employer-funded structure, which has certain advantages to it. It's highly cost-effective. And any unutilized benefits within a year actually accrue and carry over to the following year. So for low-risk primary care services, this can be quite a cost-effective solution for employers. So having a look at some trends of what we've picked up in the gap cover space this year, and from looking at last year. So last year's average, if we look at the cost per claim as to where it was, it jumped by about a 7-8% increase from last year to this year, which is exactly what we expected. Certainly not more or less than that. And that's pretty much retained through first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter of this year. Utilization levels, the first quarter of this year, we saw very similar utilization levels to what we had for the whole of last year. But we did see a tick up in the second quarter, and that is also retained through into the third, and we think it will carry through for the balance of the year. So we've got a little bit of pressure on claims, more than expected, on the utilization side. Possibly a hangover from COVID. We're not quite sure, but we'll obviously see and see how that pans out. From a funding level, we're still running well, so no particular concerns in this uptick. But as I say, we'll obviously have to keep up the funding level, and we'll have a look at the increases that we're going to implement for next year as well. So where are the claims in the gap world? As per usual, I think tariff shortfalls still make up the majority there. We're around about 2/3, and then co-payments, maybe just under a quarter of claims coming co-payments. But a big change we've seen this year for the first time is that the average value of a co-payment claim is now higher than the average value of a tariff shortfall claim. That's the first time we've ever seen that data. And what this represents is the growing transfer of costs from the medical schemes to consumers. So the co-payment values and the frequency of co-payments and the services that they're imposed upon is growing. So therefore, the average value of the co-payment claim is growing, and now, as I say, at this point now exceeds the average for our tariff shortfall claims. Oncology also making up a growing proportion of claims. So ours is just under 10% of all. And obviously the average value per claim is quite high, because of the nature of the treatment. It's ongoing as opposed to a single event. And with the new generation medicines that are coming through, the immunosuppressant therapies and the biologicals, these are very expensive. So the claims are coming through. They are high. They don't make up a major proportion of our claims, but nonetheless, the value per patient, if you like, or per member is fairly substantial. And then lastly, the Claim Optimizer, which is our service where we cover co-payments upfront on behalf of the members so that they don't have to take out of their pocket. The utilization of that's growing nicely, and we encourage all our members to make use of that, because it really just means that they don't have to take anything out of their pockets for a co-payment, and then also they don't have to submit a claim, because we settle that with the provider directly. And then a combination of all the other categories that make up the balance of claims, which I think are about 7 or 8% in that pie chart there. Okay, so in wrapping up now, looking at our annual increases for next year, it will all be from 1 January. Thankfully, the mid-year increase phase is past us, and I think we can go back to the normal renewals happening in January. So on our corporate clients, the range, there's some clients will get no increases because their accounts are running quite well, but up to about 9% on the higher accounts. So I think in the sort of range of expectation there, our weighted average will be about 6% across all clients. On private individuals, the weighted average is going to be about 8.5%. The retail market obviously always ends up being a bit higher because of the anti-selection that's more prevalent in that market, but I think still within the norm of what's to be expected in terms of medical inflation for next year. Okay, so just before we go, we'll have a launch pack that will be emailed through to you today. And then in that will be a one-pager doing a benefit comparison between 2024 and 2023. So just to highlight where the changes were. And then obviously all the 2024 product brochures will be in that pack as well. So just in closing, just on a cap as to why we think Cinagi is the right partner for you. We're always striving to produce or deliver the most comprehensive benefits we can. Service is inculcated in our culture now. It is fundamental to our DNA, if you like. So that will be something that we'll strive to maintain and even improve as we go. Our cost structures, because of the investment into digital systems, means that we have a cost advantage typically over our competitors, means we can bring in better benefits at the same price or similar benefits at a lower price. And I think you'll see that in the quotes that we have been doing, that our pricing is coming in very, very sharp. Obviously, our industry knowledge as well, we strive to stay abreast of everything that's happening, especially in terms of some of the policy stuff and can affect, and we like to share those with you. Financial security, our underwriters are A-rated, A-credit rated, so that's obviously always important to maintain that. And then we'd like to believe that we are a trusted partner for you, in which you can always come to us with any issues, anything, or even solutions that maybe bespoke solutions, which we've built a few for some of our larger clients in terms of looking at delivering a product that's specific to their needs. So in closing then, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time here today. We really do appreciate it. I wish you all the best for the year end. I know it's going to be a bit crazy for the next few months. If you need anything from our side, please feel free to reach out at any point. And we look forward to working with you now during this year and obviously going into 2024. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.